Well, let's go through the papers in a bit more detail. The political commentator with Young Voices UK, Luca Watson, is here. Luca, good morning.
Good morning.
Are you voting in any local elections this week?
Yes. No, I won't be voting my local election as there aren't any in my area.
Yes,
so
they're not.
I don't get to take part this time.
Yes, and if you were, let's talk about this page, front page of the Telegraph, saying Keir Starmer's going to tighten restrictions on immigration after this week's local elections. How much pressure do you think the Prime Minister is under from the threat of reform specifically?
Well, he's clearly feeling it. And I think that immigration has been a big issue for Labour. It's something that they haven't been trusted on, and that reform is clearly their star issue and something that they still have credibility. Unlike both parties, it should be said, the Tories and Labour have now lost significant amounts of credibility on immigration. But I would say with a caveat here that we've heard this before from Keir Starmer on the small boats during the election campaign. He was very, very strong on how he's going to smash the gangs and end the small boats. And then in practice, we've seen the opposite. The issue's gotten worse. So there's often a bit of a gap between the rhetoric that Starmer comes out and actually the action he then takes.
Yeah, well, the paper says that a white paper revealing Labour's government plans for bringing down legal migration is going to be unveiled in the weeks after the vote. Now, the government insist, and I think this is probably right, that these migration plans have been in progress for months rather than being sort of a knee-jerk reaction to potentially whatever comes out of the local elections. I wonder how bruising you think they might be for the Labour Party.
Well, I think is to be seen. I think turnout is going to be a really big issue. Local elections, of course, typically have pretty low turnout. And I think dissatisfaction with the Labour government currently is quite high. So many voters will probably think it's not worth turning out if they are sort of shy Labour voters, so to speak. And Reform is they have a really good opportunity now to act as that anti-establishment populist party. So I think there could be real momentum with Reform, and that will put a lot of pressure on a lot of Labour MPs who probably will be quite nervous, even though 2029 is still a long way away.
Yeah. Now, front page of the Daily Mail, so much for the bonfire of the Quangos. The Times also reporting, saying, look, if we analyse packages enjoyed by senior staff at bodies from this HS2, national parks, it's quite difficult for the Prime Minister to trim the state. You know, it's over 1,300 Quango staff on salaries and benefits over £100,000. Do you think the job justifies the wage?
Well, I think it depends on the job. I mean, they're all labelled as Quangos as one, but I think some roles you can tell are obviously very important. Like the boss of National Rail, I think, was the one who earned the most. Very handsome six-figure salary. But if you consider the role, the importance of running an organisation as large as National Rail, then I think that can be justified. And also, if the public sector want to have the best people, the most competent people, then a lot of the time they have to compete with the private sector, and that means competing with the private sector wages. Yeah,
well, I mean, absolutely, that would be the government justification. These headlines aren't helpful in the run-up to local elections, are they?
No, they won't look good for Labour, especially as Keir Starmer has previously suggested he wants to go to sort of war with the Quangos and get rid of lots of them. And so big headlines like this showing just how much is spent on these organisations won't help his case.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because Keir Starmer promised to shrink Quangos, and actually we have heard what's happening to NHS England. That's being merged with the Department of Health. If he hadn't made that pitch, perhaps there wouldn't be so much scrutiny on their pay packet.
Well, I think there's always scrutiny on the pay packets of civil servants and Quangos and the public sector in general. So I think that's something that's unavoidable, especially for Labour. They always face scrutiny for this. I think the thing with Keir Starmer is that because he makes such a big deal of the rhetoric and going after it, it's then on him to act as he's been saying.
Let's move on. Front page of the Metro. This is also on the front page of the Times. We have had, I think, in the last year, 2 years, much greater scrutiny on what we're eating in terms of ultra-processed food. And Eleanor Hayward, the health editor, says on the front page of the Times, thousands of middle-aged people in Britain die prematurely each year as a result of ultra-processed foods. I mean, what have we learned?
Well, the study said there's a correlation, and there isn't quite evidence that the ultra-processed food causes these premature deaths, but there is a correlation. So I think we shouldn't jump the gun here and say definitely it's the ultra-processed food which is causing all these deaths. But yeah, I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone that eating a diet which is heavy in fried food and saturated fats and crisps is probably not fantastic for your health.
Yeah. The study found that for every 10% an increase of the proportion of daily calories from UPF, that then increased the risk of death from all biological causes, including cancer, heart disease by 3%. Do you think we sort of fell into the UPF trap without really realising?
Well, potentially, I think it's cheaper usually. I mean, that's one of the main advantages of ultra processed food, that it's a lot cheaper. It tends to last longer, so it's quite convenient as a form of food to eat, and it's also quite tasty, has to be said, a lot of the time.
Of course,
But
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it is. I think it is becoming clearer and clearer that this kind of diet, heavy in fried and ultra processed food, is not ideal for our health, and it might be convenient, but what it's costing us is long term our well being.
Yeah. How careful are you with what you eat? I mean, you're young. You're young. We had a
Um,
story last week that said you didn't have to worry. There was a front page of the Times about sort of drinking and smoking until you were 36. So, Luca, you may have quite a long span in front of you to enjoy whatever processed food you like.
oh, well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I am known to be fond of a McDonald's, it must be said. So that's yeah. For a few more years, I think I can afford a bit of leeway there. Then.
Front page of the Times. We're going to hear much more about this at 8 o'clock on Times Radio Breakfast. Violent criminals could be tried without juries. Defendants accused of violent crimes and drug dealing could be among those to lose their automatic right to a jury trial. This is under plans that's been backed by ministers, and it's really because we have such a significant court backlog. Do you think this is the right way to solve that problem?
I don't think this is necessarily the right way. I mean, obviously, a court backlog, I think it's around 80,000 cases. It's something that desperately needs to be dealt with, especially in some very serious cases. In that story, it said there's some rape cases taking up to 7 years to go to trial, which is just horrible for the victims and clearly a complete failure from the state. But the real issue we have in the justice system is a lack of prison places. So what we're seeing is that repeat offenders going in and out of the system constantly they're back out on the streets because there aren't enough places within the justice system, within the prison, to incapacitate them. And so they're continuing to commit crimes. So I think the justice system as a whole needs a significant number of reforms, and this on its own probably won't be enough.
Yeah, but the idea, though, the principle of saying, because they were saying initially when this idea was put forward, it was partly by the Times and Justice Crime Commission, that non-serious crimes could be tried, or non-violent crimes could be tried without a jury. Are you comfortable with a trial taking place that maybe would have two magistrates and a judge rather than a jury of 12 people?
I'm personally comfortable with it. It's something that many countries don't have jury trials. They go straight to judges, and I still think they have a solid justice system, and usually there aren't any issues there. But I do think that we should be cautious around straying too far away from the jury system, which has served this country well for a long, long time now. And that definition of non-serious incidents, let's see how lax that is, because it can often stray into becoming something that becomes a lot more encompassing than was originally intended or sold as.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's really interesting. There'll be much more of this after 8 o'clock on Times Radio Breakfast. Luca, there was a story last week. Someone was charged with having 3 jobs, full-time jobs at once. The Times have done some sort of digging here, and they say there has been a real rise in the number of people working from home who then have 2 or more roles without their workplace being aware. And actually, the Times has hunted down these sort of influencers on TikTok giving advice for how to juggle multiple contracts. What is going on here, do you think?
Well, fraud, essentially, in a word. I mean, it's people saying that they're only having one job with an employer, signing a full-time contract, and secretly doing other jobs. And I think one of the issues is, as you mentioned, these things are advertised on sites like TikTok and social media as sort of hacks, and people might unknowingly start going into it, not realizing that what they're doing can be a crime and they can be committing fraud.
I know, but, I think the problem is if your employer hasn't got any idea, it seems really impossible to me. How could you possibly do 2 jobs properly? Presumably there'll be some expectation to, deliver work, arrive at meetings. How can you possibly do 2 properly at once?
Well, I think it suggests maybe that some jobs aren't quite as intense as people may think. That it says a lot about these jobs if someone can juggle 2 or 3. I think in some cases people are just working like mad, and they maybe just really need the money. but it shows that maybe in some jobs people have been slacking, even those who are only doing that one job.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they're trying to crack down, particularly work out where, people have been paid double salaries and, not been transparent about it. It's an interesting read today in the paper. Now, there's a very crazy competition that's taking place in Brussels. Two siblings go head to head to find out who can do the best impersonation of a seagull. I think that's quite good. That was the winner last year, who's going up against his sister. That's the 10-year-old Cooper Wallace, who retained his title at the contest in Belgium. His 7-year-old sister would like to take the crown from him. Part of the reason of this competition is to give us a better relationship with seagulls. I don't have the most hugely positive one after one trip to Lyme Regis, where I came into very close contact with two seagulls that I didn't wish to. Will this contest do anything to better establish our relationship with these birds?
I wish them luck, but I think they'll struggle to do so. I think as you said, many people have had unfortunate incidents with seagulls, which means they might not be their biggest fans. But I think it's a fun competition. Who knows? Maybe it'll inspire a few people to take a slightly different view of our seagull friends.
It does look very fun. I mean, there's the junior and senior category, so we've learnt the winners in the junior category. Contestants could enter as a colony, so you and your friends could all dress up as seagulls and sound like seagulls as well. Very silly, but I think a lot of fun. Luca, thank you very much. Luca Watson, it's been a pleasure going through the papers this morning, political commentator with Young Voices UK. The other piece